Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Coach Mark. So we just had some fun learning about the Karo Khan defense for black against e4 with our recent speed run, and now it is time to focus back on the main overall beginner to master series on the channel. And we've talked about several things. We talked about a couple of openings. We talked about tactics, recognition. We talked about middle game strategies, and now it is time to turn our attention to the one thing that I haven't really talked too much about on this channel, and that is in-game.
Avengers! Assemble.
Yes, Avengers Endgame. What a fantastic movie that was. So what I like to do in this video is have a discussion about the movie, my thoughts on it, what I liked about it, what I did. Okay, so me play joke. I think the reason why the end game is so difficult in chess for a lot of people, especially beginners and lower rated intermediate players, is because quite honestly, you just don't get there. You don't get that experience because, let's face it, below the 1,000 level, games are won and lost because the kings are wide out in the open, there are blunders left and right. And so you really need to get above 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 level where you and your opponent are good enough to where you're battling it out, you're reaching that end game and you're building that experience. So my goal with this end game series is for you not to have to go through a bunch of growing pains, steep learning curves, and having to learn things the hard way. So you'll be better prepared when you finally get to these situations. Now, I will say that there are a lot of different end games. You could read 3 different books and watch 15 different YouTube videos, and some will say 7 end game principles, 3 principles, 15, 30 end game principles. So there are a lot out there. And so I don't want to make these videos too long. So I'm going to kind of break it down into chunks. I'll probably do each video maybe 3 or 4 in-game principles at a time. And so I've made a list here in a table of contents. I want to share this with you so that you can kind of see the layout and kind of where we're going, where we're heading here. So let's take a look at this table of contents. Okay, so here is the table of contents. We'll go through this quickly. This is my own personal list. I have 26 written down. That's certainly not all of them. Probably by the time it's all said and done, I actually might be over 30 in-game principles. These are things that I've learned and amassed over the years through blood, sweat, and tears, my own experience, watching Grandmaster videos, reading books or whatever, all different kinds of resources. These are in no particular order, just for grins and giggles. We can sort these in alphabetical order. That's not right. So that needs to be up here. Okay, that's better. All right, so let's go through these. 2 connected pass pawns versus a rook. Very special relationship between those that not a lot of people know about. Avoiding stalemate traps is super important because there are a lot of things that your opponent can do to trick you into stalemate. Obviously, pawns are going to be a huge part of this, creating pass pawns, pushing them, cutting off the king, super important. You guys have seen my little Gandalf, you shall not pass. Zugzwang, very, very important. Now, a lot of people know about opposition, but not a lot of people know about distant opposition, and very few people know about diagonal opposition. We'll discuss those. Don't rush. That is probably number 1. We're going to talk about that one in this first video. King activity, super important. Getting your king in front of pawns. Opposite color bishops. We're going to talk about this one in this video. The distinction between a pass pawn that's on the outside, connected pass pawns, protected pass pawns. You've heard me say this. Most of you guys have probably heard this saying, pass pawns must be pushed. Pawn breakthroughs. I can't tell you how many students I've had that say, Coach Mark, I just don't know what to do. It's 3 pawns against 3 pawns, 4 pawns against 4 pawns. I don't know which one to push. I don't know how to break through. So we'll definitely spend a lot of time on that one. Perpetual checks is very frustrating when you're up, 11 queens, 3 knights and 4 bishops and a rook, and they just sit there, check, 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 check. 3-fold repetition draw. Rooks belong behind pawns. That's a huge one. We're going to talk about that one in this video. A lot of people know about the rule of the square. Not a lot of people know about the rule of the wandering square. So we'll talk about that. I love this one, sacrificing to promote. Setting up a blockade when you're down material. Let's say you're down the exchange or you're down the exchange in a pawn. How can you rearrange and mobilize your pieces to set everything up so that you're in a castle, surrounded by a moat and a dragon, and you're just going to chill. You're going to set up a blockade where your opponent can't break through.
Oh my God!
I'm very, very big about. When you're winning, just trade, simplify the position, trade down to an easy winning king and pawn in game, or trading down to a one in game. I probably will close this series with this one, not just in game principles, very specific patterns that you need to know. What to do with a queen versus a pawn that your opponent's pawn is about to promote. How do you save it with the queen? What to do with a rook versus a knight, a queen versus a rook. And if you really want to know, I'll teach you how to checkmate with two bishops and a bishop and a knight. But that comes up so infrequently. It's so rare. I mean, you probably see it, honestly, 1 out of 100,000 games. I mean, I played over 500,000 in my life, and I've probably seen it 4 times. So I don't even teach this to my students because they're wasting their money. I mean, you're almost never going to see it. Most of you guys will never see it in your lifetime. So, but if you really want to know, we'll talk about it. Supporting your pass pawns. A lot of times people will push their pass pawns too early. They don't have enough support. They don't have enough minor pieces to escort that pawn down the board. Triangulation. There's a lot of geometry in chess. I might know something about that, teaching geometry for 10 years. In the end game, which is better? Is it better to have a knight or a bishop? You guys know me. I like to normally have a knight versus bishop, but there are some situations where having a bishop is better against a knight if those are the only minor or major pieces on the board. And then wrong color bishop. So we're going to hit that one in this video as well. So the 4 that we're going to cover in this video are going to be, we're going to talk about the wrong color bishop. We're going to talk about opposite color bishops. We're going to talk about don't rush. And we're going to talk about rooks belong behind pawns. So without further ado, let's go.
And here we go.
Okay, so the one that I chose for number 1 to kick us off with our in-game principles series is opposite colored bishops. Now, why did I choose that one for number 1?
I don't know.
Okay, so I simply chose this one. It's certainly not the most important, but it's kind of like the double pawns lesson that I did before the 10 middle game strategies. You kind of need to know about double pawns before some of those middle game strategies talk about revolve around double pawns. So it's the same thing here. A lot of end games revolve around the wrong color bishop, opposite color bishop. So I thought we'd go ahead and knock this out. So what the main thing you need to remember is that all other things being fairly equal, if you're down to opposite color bishops and a pawn or two, most of the time it's a dead drawn position. And that's for several reasons. Number 1, these two guys can never take each other off the board. They can never attack each other. So they're pretty much always going to stay on the board. They can only get to half the squares, 50% of the squares. And a lot of times both sides will be able to kind of lock down the position with pawns and neither side can make any progress. This is a classic example. Neither side can win because each side will be able to sacrifice their own bishop for their opponent's pawn. So this pawn will never promote on A8 because black will just sack the bishop. And you'll be left with the bishop, and that's not enough material to checkmate. It's not enough to win. So we can go ahead and start walking our way up the A file, and black can just laugh in our face and just shuffle. They don't even have to do anything. And we can never promote this. And you might say, well, what if we bring the king in? It doesn't help. Even if you get the king to B8, again, if you promote, black will just sack the bishop because our bishop's on the wrong color. We can never interfere with the light colored bishop's path to sacrifice itself. So likewise, if we start bringing our king in, then black can just start, pushing their pawn, and we just kind of reach two rams beating their head against each other. If you promote, then white's going to sacrifice here, and if white promotes, black's going to sacrifice here. And it's just a dead drawn position. Okay, so that is kind of a classic example, 2 opposite color bishops and a couple of pawns. Now, let's take a look at this one. What if we throw in an extra pawn for black? I'm going to ask you guys a ton, as always, to pause the video, think through these. You'll be better apt to increase your learning progress if you figure these out on your own. Pause the video. Do you think this is winning for black, or do you think white can still draw this? Okay, so it is still a draw for white, and there are 1,000 different ways that white can do this. There's no cookie cutter recipe, but the main thing to remember is we don't care about our pawn. We're losing, right? So we're not going to try to promote this pawn. We just need to make sure that either we set up a blockade or we win one of these pawns and we're able to sacrifice our bishop for the other. So king activity, very strong in-game principle. We'll talk about that one in the next video, but we need to make a beeline over here to one of these dark squares. So let's say that we start making our way over there and black says, no, I'm not going to let you do that. And they go to G3. They're not letting us come in here. Well, their king is too far away from their 2 pawns. So we could simply play something like bishop to E7. And what are you going to do? You can never play that move, or I'll just take it. If you try to prepare that with H6, pause the video, what would you play here as white? Yeah, bishop F8. And now you're going to lose one of these guys. If you push that one, you lose this one. If you push this one, you lose this one. And then the white bishop will be able to sacrifice itself for the other one. So that doesn't work. So let's say that we start making our way over here to these squares and black says, okay, I'm not going to be able to use my king. Let's just go ahead and start pushing some pawns. So instead of this, let's say they push G5. Okay, well, we still can make our way over here. We're attacking the bishop. Let's say they get the bishop out of the way. And we're going to start coming over here on the dark squares. And let's say that they push their H pawn. Okay, well, we can put our bishop here. And now, if they push the G pawn, what would you play here as white? All of their pieces are on light squares, right? So their dark squares are weak. So we're going to jump in here to G3. Once this king gets to G3, none of these pieces can ever kick it, right? And the only way to kick the king is with that pawn. And so now all we're going to do is we're just going to stick our bishop on this diagonal. We don't even care about this pawn. We're just going to shuffle. Just shuffle here. Go here. Well, it's black to play. They can't play this because we'll just take it with a bishop. So what does black do? I don't know. Just here. We're just going to shuffle. You know, well, they can never make any progress. So that doesn't really work. So if we get back to this position, let's say that they push H4. Well, again, we need to make our way to the H2 square. Okay, let's say they drop their king down. Well, king H2. And what are you going to do? You can't move the G pawn because the H pawn is going to drop. So let's say that they want to try to push this pawn. So they get their bishop on this diagonal. All right, we can push a pawn. Fine, whatever. They push here. Now this guy's defended. Still doesn't matter. Push. They go here. And now what would you play here as white? Check. And now we have all the controls. We have control of all the dark squares. And again, we're just going to shuffle. Not that. We're going to shuffle back and forth on this diagonal. You can never push this guy. You can never push this guy. We've got a fortress, a blockade set up. So that doesn't work. So you can see a lot of times we have these drawn positions. So that's one thing I have in my notes there on the side of the screen is you got to be very careful. I'm huge on trading down in end games when you're up material. You got to be very careful about blindly trading when they're opposite colored bishops because sometimes 1 pawn, 2 pawns, maybe even 3 pawns is not enough to win. Okay, so let's take a look at this next example here. Okay, let's go ahead and introduce the concept of the wrong color bishop, which is very similar to opposite colored bishops. I like to show you guys this 2-board layout. I think it's a little bit easier to help visualize the differences here. So these 2 positions are almost the exact same. From the white point of view, they are. From the black point of view, over here on the left, we have a bishop on the dark square. On the right, we have a bishop on the light square. One of these is winning for white, and one of these is a draw for white. I'll give you a moment to pause the video. Which one is which? Okay, so congratulations if you said the board on the left is a draw and the board on the right is a win. Why is this? Well, because on the left, we have opposite color bishops, right? Dark square versus light square. So black will always be able to sacrifice itself for the pawn on the dark square, and the light square bishop is an innocent bystander. It cannot help. It cannot do anything about it. So if it's black's turn to play, then they simply play bishop to c5. And you can never push this pawn because we saw before it'll just sacrifice itself. What if it's white's turn to play? And what if white plays this move? What would you play here as black? Well, same thing. We can go here or here. Okay, let's say that white plays that move. What would you play? Yeah, we just give a check. You got to move out of the way, and then we're going to sacrifice ourselves. So there's nothing to be done here. This is a draw. However, on the right side, it's a little bit more complicated. Because the bishops are on the same color, black has the wrong color. They don't have opposite colored bishops. So this white or this white bishop, the bishop on the light squares will be able to interfere with black's path. So let's say it is white's turn to play. Let's say they push the pawn to e7. What would you play here as black? Well, we have to stop that. So we'll put the bishop on c6. And now we are ready to sacrifice ourselves for the pawn. So obviously white can't do that. So now white is going to get their bishop to f8. They can go here, here, doesn't matter. Let's say they go up. Let's say we bring our king forward, and now the king goes here. And we bring our king forward. You still can't push this pawn because we still sacrifice. So now is where white comes up with a really nice move. If you'd like, you can pause the video. Yeah, same color bishops. We can interfere. And obviously black can't take that because white takes, gets out of the way, and promotes. So what do we do here as black? Well, we got to get out of the way. We got to get off of this diagonal. So let's say, okay, well, I can't stop it that way. Let's stop it on the other side. Let's go to d5 and try to get here or get here. Well, now we have an upside down V. So we need to use our light squared bishop. And I'll give you guys a moment to pause the video. What is a plan you could come up with here for white? Well, we have this upside down V. So what we need to do is we need to cut the black's bishop off from one of these. It's going to be better to cut the light square bishop off, the black bishop off on this side. So we simply need to move our light square bishop to one of these. We can't go there because the bishop will take us. So any of these are fine. Let's say we go to b5. And now black says, okay, I can't get you this way. I'm going to get you this way on the other side of the V. And they go here. All right, what would you play here as white? Bishop c4. If we had gone to a4, we'd go to b3. If we had gone to d7, we'd go to e6. And our goal is simple. We simply want to interfere with the black bishop. So let's say the king comes up, and now we interfere, right? And this is lost. Nothing to do. If you take, we take and promote. If you move, we promote. Okay, so black can't do that. So let's say that after white plays this nice little move, what is black going to do? You might say, aha, well, I'll come back around and get you back on this way again. That don't work, right? So black is stuck. That's a great example of having the wrong color bishop because it's not an opposite color. Okay, let's look at this position. What do you notice? Opposite color bishops, right? But white has 3 pawns to black's measly little 1 pawn. Pause the video. If it's actually doesn't matter whose move it is to go here. Pause the video. Do you think this is winning for white or do you think this is a draw? It's still a draw because we have a blockade on the light squares. So if white goes first, maybe they'll move their king here and we just go here. Blockade. If black goes first, you can put your bishop on d3 and you're controlling this. And you have white has the wrong color bishop. You can never dislodge our king because you got the dark square bishop. A king cannot dislodge a king. And the only way to do it is to push this pawn, which means you have to get your king all the way over here. But even so, we would just keep our bishop on this diagonal and we will always have 2 attackers on that g6 square. What if white says, okay, I'll come around and try to pick this up while you're defending that? Okay, I just put my bishop on g6. And what are you going to do? Go here, I just shuffle. You attack my pawn, I defend. The only guy that can harass our light squared bishop is the king. And as soon as you bring your king towards my bishop, I'm either going to go here to blockade or I'm going to go here to defend the pawn. You cannot make any progress. So let's take a look at a little bit more of an extreme example. Okay, so very extreme example here. This is a classic setup if you've never seen this before, but it is 4 pawns against 2 pawns. What do you think? Can black win this or is this a draw? Well, notice opposite color bishops. What do you think? Pause the video. This is a draw for white. They have 1 move and 1 move only. So if you've never seen this and you figure this out, you got to let me know in the comments. I'll be really, really impressed. Pause the video. Take your time. Middle game strategy number 7, positional sacrifices. Clarence sacrifice, we sack the pawn. If you try something like bishop here to come around from the backside to pick this up, forcing the pawn to move, that doesn't work. You go here, the king goes here, and you're never getting to that square. And then black's going to push their pawns down your throat, and that's it. We clearance sacrifice the pawn. Bishop's got to take this. Now that opens up the diagonal. Now we go bishop g3, and the king is too far away to help. So we're either going to pick up this pawn and set up a blockade here, or now if they push, we go king d4. Or we could have gone here, doesn't matter. We set up a blockade on the dark square. There's not a single piece that black has that can dislodge our king except this pawn. And they bring the king in, we just go here. Or come around to the backside. Doesn't matter. You attack our bishop. We're just going to sit here. We're either going to shuffle back and forth we're just going to shuffle back and forth on these 2 squares. There's nothing you can do. You'll never make progress. So black has 4 against 1, and these 3 pawns are absolutely worthless. Absolutely worthless. So, yeah, pretty cool. All right, one last example, then we'll move on. Okay, so in this position, once again, we have opposite colored bishops, 2 pawns versus 2 pawns. What do you guys think? Is this a draw, or is this winning for one side or the other? Pause now. This one actually is winning for white. What's the difference? Well, black has 2 pawns in the center, and this white bishop is the hero. It's doing about 8 different things. First of all, it's blockading both of these pawns. It physically is blocking that one, and you can't move that. We'll just take it. Second of all, it's guarding our own pawn. It's cooking. It's doing a lot of different things. So our king has the freedom to move about the board, and that's not the same. It's not true for the black king because it has to stay watch over this pawn. So this king is overloaded. It can't guard both of these pawns. Likewise, this bishop can't help out in both of these pawns. So how does white make progress? You can't push that. They'll just take it. So we have a couple of different things here. We could move the bishop out of the way and make a beeline this way. We could move our king over. It doesn't really matter. Let's say we attack the bishop. They get out of the way. We start moving this way. They put the bishop back. Doesn't matter. And they just shuffle. We go here, and now what do? They can never push this. They can never come over here and help because they got to worry about this. So let's say they back up, and now we push. Let's say they try to come around from the other side. Get in like this. It's too late. They can't stop the pawn. But even if they were able to, sacrifice themselves for the pawn, they can't do anything about this. And this guy can never leave. So this is absolutely 100% winning for white. Okay, so that's it for opposite colored bishops, the wrong colored bishops. So let's go ahead and move on to in-game principle number 2. Okay, so in-game principle number 2 is do not rush. Don't rush. There's too much to calculate. And I'll say that this is something that I certainly need to work on. And I actually think it's more important than all of the other in-game principles. Everybody needs to focus on this. And I'll come right out of the gate. I want to make this point. I don't think there are enough people in the chess community, international masters, grandmasters, articles, interviews, online chat forums, whatever. There aren't enough people talking about the fact that in the end game, when you make mistakes, you don't come back from that. I played every sport under the sun growing up, in college, in my 20s, except for hockey, because I'm in the deep south in the United States. But every sport I've ever played, when you make mistakes early in the game or the match or whatever, you can come back from that. One of the first sports I played was baseball. So if your shortstop makes an error and drops the ball in the second inning and the runner gets to first and ends up coming around and scoring, it's an unearned run. You can come back from that. You still got 7 more innings, at least in the higher level baseball. Same thing with American style football. If your team is down by 2 points and you're driving down the field late in the 4th quarter and you fumble with 20 seconds to go, you ain't coming back from that. You don't have enough time to recover. And it's the same as that thing in chess. If you drop your knight on move 11 at a certain level, you can come back from that. But if you drop your knight deep into the end game, you're toast. It's lights out. And so as the game gets further and further along, and you get closer and closer, deeper into the end game, every little nuance, every little inaccuracy or mistake is exponentially blown out of proportion. So you just don't have time to recover. So I've got some notes over here on the side again. I basically just talked about the first bullet point there. I'm going to come back to number 2. Number 3, we always try to find 3 candidate moves, right? And you try to filter and find the best one. In the end game, it is critical that you do that. Why? For two reasons. Number one, you want to find good moves, the best move. And then number two, it's going to cause you to slow down. At least come up with two candidate moves. Try to get three or four because that's going to force you to slow down. Because a lot of times in the end game, they're like, ooh, they move there. I have to do this. Well, hold on, wait a minute. Let's slow down. We got a lot of things to calculate and take your time. So the next thing they'll say is the time management aspect. Very few people are good at leaving themselves enough time for the end game. If you're playing a 10-minute game, don't leave yourself a minute and a half or 2 minutes. It's not enough. If you're playing 30 minutes, don't leave yourself 4 minutes. Play with increments so you're not stressed out about time. And I hope this will be eye opening for some of you guys. I think there's a big misconception out there about what is the hardest part of the game as far as having to calculate. And certainly with the folks that I work with, I think most people would say the middle game because you have the most pieces on the board. It's just so many middle game strategies. What do I want to do? What's their plan? You're just in the wide world. You're in the jungle, right? And so, but it's actually, and a lot of people say, well, when you get to the end game, there aren't as many pieces on the board, so there's not as much to calculate. It's the exact opposite.
See, it's the exact opposite.
Exact opposite. So yes, there are less pieces on the board in the end game, but they have more room, they have more scope, more range. So your bishops and your queen have more diagonal squares to get to. Your rooks have more squares on the open files and ranks to get to. So most of the time is the other way around. So I'm going to ask you guys to do me a favor, bear with me, trust me. I think this will be wildly eye-opening for many of you. So I'm going to take you through a quick little demonstration to illustrate this point. This is a random position I came up with. Notice that not a single piece has been traded off the board. All 32 pieces are still there in the opening phase of the middle game. I'm going to count every single legal possible move from both sides. We'll tally that, go to an end game based off of this position, and do the same thing and compare. So for the white side, I might miss one or two, but it doesn't matter. For the white side, we'll start the pawns. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Let's see here. We got one with a king, 33, one with a rook, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. All right, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to write these down so I don't forget. All right, 41 for white. For black, start with the pawns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Don't think I missed any. All right. So 41 and 32. So we got 73. 73 total moves. Now I just kind of took some pieces off the board, moved a couple of pieces around, and we have this in game. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Half of 32 is 16. So we literally have less than half of the pieces on the board. All right, so we're in the end game. So I'm going to do the same thing. Let's count. We got, well, I'll start with white. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Did I miss anything? With the bishop, we have 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. Okay. We got 42 for white. For black, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. That's all the queen moves. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. Okay, 49 for black. 42 and 49. That's 91, guys. 73 versus 91. So with half of the pieces, more than half of the pieces off the board, we have 20 more possible legal moves, but it's not there. It's deeper than that. If you go back and look at this position, there are far more moves in this position that are meaningless or garbage or rubbish, right? I mean, look at these moves. Like, that's garbage, garbage, trash, trash, garbage, rubbish, trash, trash, trash. You know, king to h1, really? This is a fantastic move. Queen to b2. And now your rook needs this to get out of jail. And the other thing to consider in this position is that while some of these are not garbage moves, they aren't moves that are cause for concern that you need to immediately calculate or react to. If white plays this, you don't need to react to that. You don't need to react to that. You don't need to react to that. Don't need to react to this or this. I mean, but in the end game, when we look at this position, there aren't too many moves that you don't need to go, okay, why do they do that, right? Just so much more complexity to these positions. And yes, we've got some garbage moves in this position, of course, but there aren't quite as many, right? Every rook move needs to be carefully calculated, right? And so I hope that illustrates the point that there is more calculation many times in the end game than any other part of the game. That's why you cannot rush, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. Okay, example number 1. So I think this is a good one to kind of start off with. So white has this extra bishop, but black has an extra pawn, a dangerous pass pawn. But white is technically up 2 points of material. So, of course, this is completely winning for white. There are a lot of different things that white can do to win this game. So I'll give you a chance to pause the video if you like and see if you can come up with a plan. So the first thing that kind of jumps out to me is, well, our king is on a light square. They have the dark square bishop. You guys have heard me say this a lot on the channel. I'm always paying attention to the color of their bishop. So I want to put all my stuff on light squares, right, away from their dark square bishop. So we have our king nestled in here that can never be kicked out. And we have one attacker on the pawn, and they do have the dark square bishop. But if we can reroute our bishop over here and put pressure, we'll have 2 against 1 and just make sure the king can't come to defend the pawn. So I think a lot of people, again, not rushing, I think a lot of people not knowing about this would just simply play bishop f8, right? We got 2 attackers on this, and now you can't go here or here. So we're just going to win the pawn. So let's say black moves, and we simply pick up the pawn. Uh-oh. And it's like...
It was at this moment that he knew.
You just gave the game away. Because now you can't take that. If you take that, ouch. You have no way to stop this pawn. It's going to promote. Because why? You just rushed in. You're like, man, I'm going to pick up this pawn and we're going to end the game and that's going to be it, right? How many times have you played a game where you did something like, you're like, oh my gosh, I just threw the whole game away. So once you got to this point, you're like, as soon as they took, you're like, oh crap, I cannot take that. So what are you going to do? Well, let's say you, let's say we make a knight move with queen to a1. You just back up here and we got 2 against 2. And this is dead even. There's nothing that either side can do to make progress. Okay, so that's not that hard to see. That's kind of elementary. Let's say we're a little smarter than that. Let's say that we play check, one of many possibilities, and say the king goes to c5, and we come around and give another check, get the king off of that square, and the king goes back. All right, once again, we have 2 attackers on this, right? But now it's a little bit different because if we take, and we take, the bishop is on this a2 square. Okay, so we just snap off the pawn. Okay, once again, there's an issue here. Can you pause the video, see what black can play in this spot? Yeah, it's the same thing. They can push a2. And if we got to stop this. If we take the pawn, then they take our bishop. If we take their bishop, then they promote their pawn. So this is another example. It's like, oh my gosh, I just threw the game away. Now, I will say that this is one reason I'm talking about time management. If you don't leave yourself enough time, you cannot sit here and try to calculate your way out of this because you just don't, you'll crumble under the time pressure. White does have one move and one move only that maintains their winning advantage. Pause the video. What can white play here? Yeah, they have C3 here. If they don't play that, it's a draw. And now they can't take this because we'll just take. And now if they, well, they're in check, so they can't push the pawn. So they got to do something. If they take, then we take. If they move their king, we've got this square, this square, this square, this square covered. So the king has to move away. And once the king moves away, now we're free to take this pawn. And we're just up an extra bishop. And that is game over. So that's not going to work. Let's say that we go back here and let's say that we played the check. They went here and we gave a check here and they went here. Okay, so here's where we don't need to rush. There is that saving grace that we have with a C3, but we don't need to do that. We don't need to rush into taking this pawn. None of their pieces can do anything. They cannot move, right? So all we need to do is basically play a waiting move. Let's say we play something like bishop back to G8 or F7 or whatever. What are they going to do here? If they go here, then we can take it. And if they take, we take, and our bishop's still covering that. What are they going to do? If they back away, we're just going to take that. We're just going to take that pawn. Let's say they just back up here. Once again, we have this same issue. If we take, they can push the pawn, right? There's no reason to rush. Pause the video. What would you play here as white? Well, a lot of things you could play. King A4. What a useful move. We're opening up the diagonal for the bishop. None of these pieces can do anything. They can do absolutely jack diddly squat. And now that we have the bishop lined up to cover this A2 push, now whatever they do, they can't go there. Yeah, they can't go there. If they go there, then we take with check, and we take your bishop, so the king can't really do anything. And then now we have the freedom to take this pawn without any stress, and we have this covered, so it's not a big deal. Great example of not rushing in the endgame. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, here's another good one. So the material is even. It is white to play. Go ahead and pause the video. What would you play here as white? King activity is a big part of the endgame. I think a lot of people would start bringing their king towards the center. That looks good. I think most people, beginners probably, would start pushing their pawns down the board. We have an absolutely devastating move here for white. Bishop to B5. Yikes. With that one move, we have completely paralyzed all three of black's pieces. This guy is now dominated. It cannot go to any of these squares as it is dominated by the bishop, right? This pawn can't move. We just take it, and this pawn physically can't move, right? So another big part of the endgame is counterplay removal. Look at what your opponent can do and try not to let that happen. You guys hear me say this all the time on the speedrun games or whatever on the channel. You know, find the one way you can lose the game and make sure that doesn't happen. This is a little bit different. What is the counterplay that black has? Well, if you look at the original position, what is the difference between these two positions other than a bishop versus a knight, that kind of thing? The difference is white's pawns on the same side as the black king. So this guy is going to act as resistance. That's not the case over here. This guy's on the wrong side of the board. The king cannot add any resistance over here. So it's up to the light square bishop to defend. And what are we going to do? Boom, jam it in there, not allow anything to happen. So that's a great example of counterplay removal, making a very, very precise move. And now our king is free to roam about the board because this king can never come over here and try to dislodge our bishop because we got two passed pawns. This guy has to babysit this. So now we're just going to simply march our king up the board, push our pawns down their throat, and that's it. That's going to be game over. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Yeah, this is a good one, a little bit of a classic if you've never seen this one before. So it's white to play, and we're up 2 pawns. So pause the video. Do you think that white can win this? Do you think this is a draw? What would you play here as white? Pause now. Classic case of not rushing. I guarantee you there are a lot of people out there that would have played G6. Raise your hand if you played G6. All right, put your hand down because you get to go sit in the corner with a little dunce hat on. I'm joking. That seems like a very logical move, right? There's an issue here. Okay, it was winning for white, and now it's a draw. See if you can pause the video and find the amazing move that black has to secure the draw. Black has one move and one move only. Pause now. The move is bishop h7. Yikes, what a fantastic move. And what does white do here? We cannot check the king because that pawn is pinned to our king. And the reason why black did this is because they just need to get one of the pawns. They just need to sacrifice their bishop for this g-file pawn. And so we can't do anything. If we take that, then the king takes and we have no way to guard that. They're just going to pick up the pawn and that's a draw. If we go back here, what else can we do? Well, let's say that we defend. Okay, well, black is going to sacrifice itself. And guess what, guys? This is exactly why I did number one with the opposite color bishops in the wrong color. Guess what? We have the wrong color bishop. We have the wrong color bishop. We cannot keep this king out of the dark square. There's nothing that you can do. This is a well-known theoretical draw. If you push this, what's black to play? So they're just going to shuffle back and forth. If you bring the king in, you cannot keep me from getting to these two squares. Yeah, what do you do here? Check. Here, here. You can't keep me out of the corner. If you push up, that's stalemate. If you back up, king goes here. Let's say you kind of waste a move. You know, let's say you go here and go here and you push the pawn. I'm going in the corner and there's nothing that you can do. That's a stalemate. So very, very, critical, important stuff there. So let's go back to the original position here. So let's say that, let's flip the board around here. So let's say that we had something like, or actually, let me set up set up the position here. Let's flip this around. This and say we got this. Okay, well, what is the difference here? Let me go ahead and load this. Let's just say it's white to move. What is the difference? The difference is we now have the correct color bishop. So now you can play that move. And now this doesn't work, right? Because now we can play the check. I mean, we can do a lot of things. We can go here, we can play the check or whatever. King goes here, and now we just move in. And this is fine. They can't sacrifice themselves because they take, we take, and now we're stopping you from getting into that corner. And that's game over. So if we go back to the original position, what I had set up, let's move this around here real quick. Back on the other side. I think we had this position here. So what will we do instead of playing that move? That loses to the draw. Well, we simply just need to bring our king up on the dark squares away from this guy. So we could play, not that. We could just play, let me load it. We can play king up. And what does black do here? Let's just say they move their bishop somewhere. We bring in the king. They can't really do too much. Now we can bring the bishop in here. And now black is lost. We can play the check here, check, and that's actually mate. One of many different ways to win that game. Okay, next up we have this position. So it is black to play. White is desperately trying to promote. We have that cover for now. Black to play. Pause the video. What would you play here? Yep, so I'm sure a lot of you guys took the pawn. Raise your hand if you took the pawn. Put it back down. I don't want to see it. Don't rush. What is wrong with taking this pawn? Well, if you missed that, see if you can pause the video now and see what resource white has. White can now promote. We have to take that, and guess what? We have the wrong color bishop. We cannot stop them from getting into that square. Doesn't matter what we do. And we've already seen this now 3 or 4 times. This is a theoretical draw. There's nothing that black can do. So, let's go back to the beginning. What is the correct move? We have the wrong color bishop for this corner. We cannot allow the king to go there. So instead of taking the pawn, we play the very patient king a2. And now if they promote, that doesn't work. We'll just take it. And this king is preventing this king to getting into the corner. So now what do? If they promote, it doesn't matter. We'll just take that. and say they go here, we'll give them a check. And now we've got all these squares covered. They have to play something like this. And now we can just simply play a waiting move. We just keep our bishop on this diagonal, and they cannot go to these squares. They have to go somewhere. And then now we can take the pawn. They go here, we go here. We have all these covered, and the pawn promotes. Very, very tricky. Great example of not rushing and making the obvious move, right? All right, so continuing on. All right, guys, we'll wrap up with this one. This is a bit of an extreme example, but I got to throw some difficult stuff out there for our advanced players. So very, very nice sequence of moves here. It is white to play. It's a bit of a weird position because this is the first rank for white. So white's pawns are going up the board. White's one square from promoting, and black's pawns are going down the board. So white to play, pause the video. What can you come up with? Okay, so if you said immediately promote, well, that's not going to work. That's a draw because now black promotes, and that's immediately a check. So wherever the king goes, we're going to pick up the knight, and this is a draw. White's going to take one of these pawns, and this is an absolute dead draw. Queen versus bishop and queen is going to be a draw. So there's nothing there. So we can't do that. So what else can we try here? We have to stop this. What do we do about this? And the correct move is bishop f6 sacrifice. Very, very nice move. And so now we are preventing black from promoting. And so now black's going to take our bishop, and now we can promote. Black promotes. And this is also a draw. You got to move your knight somewhere. Say here, we go queen e5. This is a draw. We're not going to be able to, white's going to at least be able to sacrifice their knight for one of these, and black can't make any progress here. This is still a draw. Don't rush. You're going to love this. So we play bishop to f6, sacrifice the bishop. They take. We sacrifice the knight, knight d4. What an amazing move. And so the idea is that if black promotes, well, we're just going to fork them. That's game over. We're going to win the queen, and then we're going to promote. So, well, what happens if black takes our knight? Well, we're going to promote. They promote. Oh, but this knight sacrifice is a decoy to draw the king to a square it doesn't want to go. Boom, queen takes f6. And we skewer the king and the queen, and that is winning for white. So you might think, going back to the original position, you might think, well, why can't we play this nice, brilliant knight move anyway and get ready to fork them? The difference is now black can promote. You don't have knight c2 because it's pinned. That's why we have to throw the bishop in front, because now that is another decoy to draw the pawn here. So that now when we play this move and they promote, now we have the check because the knight's not pinned anymore. So what a fantastic sequence of moves. But again, just illustrating the point. Every time you make a move, it's like, oh, we're going to do this. No, slow down, take your time, don't rush. So the last thing that I'll say here in this second in-game principle is,
you get where you feel like you can rush the quarterback. You understand? Yeah. Rush the quarterback.
Yeah, don't do that. All right, moving on. In-game principle number 3, rooks belong behind pawns. This is very easy to understand and explain, especially after you see a few examples. And the reason why we want the rooks behind the pawns is you're either going to be trying to escort your pawn down the board to promote, or you're going to try to keep an eye on your opponent's pawn to prevent them from promoting. When you get it behind the pawn, in either case, whether it's yours or your opponent's, the pawn's going to get further and further away from you. So that means you're going to have more squares, more room to operate, more room to roam up and down that file, and you can avoid attacks, and you've got a lot more freedom. When you put your rook in front of the pawn's going to be moving closer towards you, right? So you're going to get cramped. You're going to be restricted. You're susceptible to being kicked, attacked. You just don't have much room to move around. So this is a very classic example, and I imagine many of you guys, probably most of you guys, have not seen this. And this situation comes up a lot more often than you might think. White's up a pawn. They are trying to promote. They're one square away from promoting. Black does have their rook behind the pawn. White has their rook in front of the pawn. It is black to play. Now, I ask you guys all the time to pause the video. I imagine many of you guys spent 5, 10, 15 seconds. Out of all the times I've asked you, this is one of those times, really, really spend some time. I want you to dig deep, spend a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, calculate all the different possibilities, because if you figure this out on your own, you're never going to forget it. Hopefully you won't forget it if I just give you the answer, but pause the video. Is black to play? Is this winning for white, or can black draw this? Pause now. Okay, so I would love to know the split. How many of you guys said it's a draw versus white winning? Let me know in the comments. Even if you got it wrong, let me know. I'd love to get some feedback on this, because most people actually get this wrong. And the answer is it's a draw for black. So if you've never seen this, pat on the back, congratulations. It is a draw for black. Now, if you said that white can win this, let's take a look at some reasons why that is not the case. Well, what can black do here? So they have 8 different king moves, right? They have, I mean, obviously, if the rook moves off of the G file, if the rook just moves away, then obviously the rook can just move, and then on the next move, they're going to promote. We could give a check or whatever, and that's game over. So that means that black has to keep the rook on the G file, right? Rooks belong behind pawns. Well, if the rook moves up the G file, what's wrong with this? Well, now white can simply go check the king. Check. You go here, and then I promote. And you're toast. This is winning. You can't do that. So black cannot move their rook up or down or sideways. So that means it has to be a king move. Most of the time when I go over this lesson with my students, most of the time they'll say king to d6, right? Let's just start making our way towards the pawn, right? What's wrong with this move? Well, it's the same thing. White can give a check. It doesn't matter if you go attack the rook, we're going to promote, right? And you've got to sacrifice your rook, and that's game over. So we can't do that. What if we go to d7? They can't check us, right? What's the problem with this? Pause the video. See if you can find the problem for this, the problem with this for white. White has this move, rook a8. And if you take the pawn, ouch, we have the skewer, and that's game over. So we cannot go here. We cannot go here or here. If we go to either of these, any of these squares, the rook's just going to check us. We cannot allow the white rook to check us. If we can't go here or here, the same thing. What if we go king c7? It's the same thing. We got rook a8, and you can't take that. Black has one move and one move only, and it's pretty much the most unnatural move in this entire position. If you made a list of like 100 moves that you would play here, this would be like 107 on your list. Is king to b7. King to b7 for the win. Okay, so if we go to, let's go back. So if we go to b7, now you don't have either check, right? You cannot check me here or I'll just take you, right? And if you promote, then the black takes. And you cannot get behind me. Amazing move here, okay? So what does white do? Well, for those of you who said white is winning, I mean, you might think, well, let's just move our king up and support it. We're still winning here.
Yeah, little guy. Hey, not so fast.
Nope. What are we going to do? Keep the rook behind the pawn. We're just going to shuffle. We're just going to stay on the G file. You go here, I'm going to check you. What are you going to do? You have no place to hide. I'm going to give you 1,000,000 checks. You come attack me, I'm just going to stay on the G file. You can't get me. No. It's just a dead draw. There's nothing that white can do. If they move away, then we're just going to take the pawn. That is the power of keeping your rook behind the pawn. Okay, so let's go back to this initial position here. That means in these kinds of positions, if your opponent gets their rook in front of their pawn, or even if your opponent gets their pawn one square away from promoting, you have to put on your running shoes and make a mad dash to these 4 corner squares, right? Depending on which side of the board and which quadrant of the board that the pawn is trying to promote. So the pawn's trying to promote here. We have to go to the opposite fianchetto square, right? I guess that's a good way to think about it, the 4 fianchetto squares, right? And so we're talking about not rushing, but this is actually what you need to do when this happens.
There's the start, and Bolt got a good one, and Gay's right with him, and so's Asafa Powell. Bailey's there too, but here's Bolt. Bolt charging to the front. Gay's coming, but can't catch him. Usain Bolt.
Yes, there's an exception to every rule in chess, right? This is the one time we are going to rush. You got to become Flash. Take a train, fly, swim, ride your tricycle backwards, whatever you got to do. This is going to be a safe haven, these fianchetto squares, and many of these rook and pawn endgames if you're not sure what to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and piggyback off of that and look at a few more examples. All right, next up, if you understood that, this is a piece of cake. I'll spend about 17.85 seconds on this. So as black to play, pause the video, what would you play? Same exact setup, right? Our king is on the correct fianchetto square. We just play rook g5, get the rook behind the pawn, and the king can attack us. We just shuffle up and down the g file. And it's no big deal. There's nothing they can do. We're just going to give you a million checks. Okay, next. All right, next is a pretty easy example. It's white to play. Pause the video. What would you play here as white? So there are a ton of ways to win this, but this is going to illustrate the difference between our rook is behind our pawn trying to promote. Their rook is in front of it, and this is lights out for black. You could do several different things here. You could go ahead and attack the rook. What's it going to do? It goes back. I can go attack the rook again. If they bring the king over, we simply give a check, and the king has to move away, and that's going to be game over. Probably what I would play, some of you guys might have said, rook here, something like that. Of course, that's perfectly fine. Check, something like this. Here, kick the rook. That's game over. That's lights out. Probably what I would do, and I'm going to talk about this later in this in-game series, is I would play you guys probably heard me say this a lot on the channel. I would play rook f2, and then I get to play my little clip. So we just simply cut the king off. And now this rook is completely restricted. It has no space to move. What's the black going to do? This, game over, right? Okay, so let's ramp up the difficulty a little bit here. Okay, this one is slightly trickier. So we are black. We are one square away from promoting, but white also has their own runaway pawn. But white's doing the right thing. They do have their rook behind our pawn. Makes it very difficult for us to do anything. We can't move the rook, or they'll just take it. We can't promote because they'll just take it. So defending laterally, this is why we have this in-game principle. You want to get your rook behind the pawn. Defending it laterally doesn't do anything. So what would you play here as black? Pause the video now. Okay, so this is winning for black. So if you said go attack their rook, now it's a draw. White's just going to move the rook somewhere up the A file, and there's nothing going on here. So that doesn't work. Some of you guys might have been clever enough to notice and realize that we actually can move up towards the pawn because white can't do this. Tactics recognition, condition number 1, pieces line up on the straight line. This doesn't work because when they take, now we actually can promote. As far as I know, rooks don't capture diagonally. So what do we do here? But the problem with this is if you do start moving your king up, white doesn't have to play that. They can just start pushing their pawn, and it's still a draw. If you go attack the pawn, then we'll just give you a check. And if you go here, I'll just start pushing the pawn. And this doesn't amount to anything. If you go back, we go here. If you ever go use your rook to attack the pawn, I'm just going to laugh in your face. I'm just going to play that. Take it. If you take that, I take this. And it's a dead draw. So here's where the in-game principle comes in. How do we get our rook, if you haven't figured this out, how do we get this rook behind the pawn? Well, if we do something like this, they'll just take it. So pause the video. What would you play here? We have the intermezzo rook b5 check for the win, right? King's got to go somewhere, and now we challenge the rook and get behind the pawn. This doesn't do anything. I mean, obviously, if you take us, then we take, and we're faster than you. And if you give us a check, this doesn't help. You don't have this square to go to. It's covered. And black easily wins. Okay, we got a couple more. All right, guys. So again, this is for my advanced players. Super tough. So we are white. We are trying to promote our pawn. It is white to move. Do you think this is winning for white, or do you think black can draw this? Pause the video. What would you play for white? Okay, what does black want to do? Get their rook behind the pawn. If we just promote that, that doesn't work. They can fork us. And one knight's not enough to win. So we cannot allow that rook to get to this square. So immediately I can rule out any king move. I mean, this doesn't, they can still fork us and win the pawn. That doesn't do anything. This doesn't do anything. They're getting behind the pawn. They will always be able to sacrifice themselves, sacrifice the rook for this pawn. So anytime I have a position like this, any kind of puzzle, real game scenario, I like to work from the solution backwards. So figure out what the problem is and then work back from that. The problem is we cannot allow that rook to get to the f3 square. Well, how do we do that? So this is where it becomes pretty tough. We can't do it with the king. So that leaves us with the knight. And I think some of you guys might have found knight to e5. And that does stop the rook from coming here. We sacrifice the knight. If they take our knight, we promote. And that does stop the rook from coming here. The problem with that is they can go rook to d8. And they will be able to sacrifice themselves no matter what. So the winning move here, the amazing move, is knight d4, the win.
Bruh.
What an amazing move. It can't get to the f3 square. We have that covered. If the rook takes, we promote. And if the king takes, we promote. So this is actually a brilliancy. So a fantastic interference obstruction move there by white. All right, last one and we'll finish up. And here we go. This is the position. White is trying to promote their pawn and black is doing what they should. They got their rook behind the pawn. So it is white to play. Pause the video. What would you play here for white? Is white winning or can black draw this? Pause now. Okay, did you guys remember or did you already forget? This actually is winning for white. And the correct move is a7. Where does our king want to be? That was the Usain Bolt clip, right? We've got to make a mad dash to that opposite G7 square, and we can't get there. We can't do it. White will push here. You're not in time. King goes here. They're one square too late, and now white has that move, and you can't take that pawn. If you do, boom, we skewer, and that is ball game. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed that. This first is going to be many of these, tons and tons of in-game principles. As always, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. I hope you found that hopefully entertaining. And thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.